Today's notes deal with direct and inverse variation. First of all, we're going to talk about direct variation. You have the notes in front of you, so basically follow along and actually fill them in as we go along. Direct variation. Direct variation is a relationship between two variables in which one variable increases as the other increases or decreases at a constant rate. So which means as one goes up, the other could go up, or as one goes up, the other one could go down. Direct variation can be expressed in the form of y equals k times x. In this equation, k is called the constant variation. Equations that can be used for direct variation are all of the following. Or, add this one in. Or, we could actually write it as y1 is to x2 as y2 is to x1. And that is the one we're actually going to use a lot. So this is something you're going to need to memorize. All right, with that being said, let's go on to now inverse variation. Inverse variation is the relationship between two variables in which one variable increases, the other one decreases. So now this time, as the first one goes up, the second one has to go down. For example, if the number of slices of pizza you eat varies inversely with the number of people sharing the pie, this means the more people eating the pizza, the fewer slices are going to be for you. And it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? The equations for inverse variation are as follows. The one that you need to memorize and the one that we're going to use is this one right here. x1 is to y1 as x2 is to y2. So you are going to have to memorize direct and inverse variations in order to be able to use them. With that being said, let's move on to example number 1. In example number 1, it says x varies inversely. Varies inversely means we're going to use x1 is to y1 as x2 is to y2. Okay, with that being said, if x varies inversely as y, and x is 24 when y is 6, what's the value of what's the value of y when x is 12? All right, how do I know who's x1, y1, and who's x2, y2? Well, it's very easy. The first x value you see is x1, and the first y value you see is y1. So x equals 24 is the first value I see of x, so he's going to be x1. Y equals 6 is the first y value, so he's going to be y1. Find the value of y. He's the second y, and he has no value, so he's got to be y2. And therefore, x is 12. That's the second x value, so that's going to be x2. Okay, now that we know who is who, we're going to fill them into our formula here. All right, so x1 being 24 times y1, which is 6, equals x2, which is 12, times y2, which is plain old y. Okay, so we're going to multiply 24 times 6, which is 144, equals 12y. Divide each side by 12. Our missing value of y happens to be 12. It really isn't that difficult. The only thing is you have to memorize the proper formula. With that being said, let's move on to another example. The rate at which Ishmael travels from home to his college varies inversely. Okay, so this time we're doing varies inversely. So varies inversely is x1 is to y1 as x2 is to y2. All right, it's the time it takes to make the trip. If Ishmael makes the trip in 4 hours at 45 miles per hour, how many miles per hour must he travel to make the trip in 3 hours? Well, this time they didn't give us any x's and y's. This time they're talking about hours and miles. So we're going to rewrite our formula to fit our problem. And instead of saying x1, y1, x2, y2, let's use h for hours and m for miles. So we're going to go h1 is to m1 as H2 is to M2. All right, let's fill in what we've got. If Ishmael can make the trip in 4 hours, that's my first H listed, so he's going to be H1, so 4 times, at 45 miles per hour, he's my first miles actually listed, so he's going to be my M1, so that's 45, equals how many miles per hour, so we're missing the M, will it take him to travel the trip in 3 hours? So 3 is going to be my H2, and I'm looking for my M2. All right, so 4 times 45 is 180, equals 3M. We're going to divide each side by 3, and we get 60 equals M. But in this case, it's a word problem, so we actually need to answer the question. It says, how many miles per hour must he travel? Well, Ishmael is going to have to travel 60 miles per hour. MPH stands for miles per hour. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. In number 3, it says if A varies inversely as B. Well, it's inverse variation again, so it's going to be x1 is to y1 as x2 is to y2. But in this case, we have A's and B's, so we're going to rewrite it as A1 is to B1 as A2 is to B2. All right, find the missing value. So we're looking for this value of B. Now, we know we're going to have to use 18 and that missing value of B for part of our equation. But which one should we use, 36 and 6 for A1, B1, or 24 and 9? Let's try 36 and 6 and see what we end up with. So we can say 36 is the first A we see, times 6, because that's the first B we see, equals 18, which will be the second A we see, times the question mark, which will be our second B. So 36 times 6 is 216, equals 18B. Divide each side by 18. B comes out to be 12. So our missing value is 12. Now let's say you didn't use 36 and 6. Let's say you decided for A1, B1 to be 24 and 9. Of course you're going to have to use 18 and the question mark as A2, B2 because you need that to find that question mark. So if you use 24 and 9, you would have had 24 times 9 equals 18 times B. 24 times 9 happens to be 216 also, equals 18B. Divide each side by 18, 12 equals B. So it actually didn't matter which value we put in for A1 and B1 because we got the exact same answer. All right, a couple more examples and we're done. Example number 4 says, if y varies directly, this time we're doing varies directly. So that equation is y1 is to x2 as y2 is to x1. So in this case, we're going to put the first y we see in y1 and the second x we see in x2 and the second y we see in y2 and the first x we see in x1. So let's finish reading the problem. If y varies directly as x and y equals 15 when x is negative 5, find y when x is 7. Let's label who is who in the problem. Y equals 15 is my first y value, so we'll label him as y1. X equals negative 5 is my first x value, so we'll label him x1. Find the y, so he's the guy I'm looking for, so he has to be y2. When x is 7, so he has to be x2. Now that we know who is who, let's actually plug them in our formula. All right, 15 times x2 would be 7 equals y times x1, which is negative 5. So 15 times 7 is 105 equals a negative 5y. Divide each side by a negative 5. Y happens to come out to be negative 21. So we found our missing value of 1. All right, our last problem for tonight. It says, if x varies directly, so again we're doing varies directly. So varies directly formula is y1 is to x2 as y2 is to x1. So if x varies directly as y, and x is 6 when y is 32, find x when y is 8. All right, let's see here. X equals 6 has got to be my x1. Y equals 32 is my y1. Find the x, so he has to be x2. When y is 8, he has to be y2. All right, knowing that, let's actually fill it in. We're going to have 32 times x equals 8 times 6. Okay, 32x equals 48. Divide each side by 32. X equals 1.5. So my missing value of x is 1.5. Take a look at the notes again before you actually close the video up for the night, and make sure that you understand the difference between varies directly and varies inversely. Remember, those are 2 more formulas you're going to need to memorize. We will go over this in class again tomorrow.